At some point tonight, you will feel like someone is standing behind you. You will turn around. Nothing will be there. You will laugh at yourself and go back to whatever you were doing. Most people assume this is nothing, a misfire, a leftover flinch from an animal that used to get eaten in the dark. But the real answer is far stranger. Because that exact feeling, the sense of a presence that is not there, keeps appearing in the most extreme moments of human survival. It shows up on mountains, in lifeboats, in burning buildings, in the last hours of people who are about to die. And when it appears in those places, it does not frighten anyone. It saves them. In May of 1916, three men were walking across the interior of South Georgia Island. Their ship had been crushed by ice more than a year earlier. Their crew was stranded on a rock 500 miles behind them. Ernest Shackleton, Frank Worsley, and Tom Crean had already crossed the most dangerous ocean on Earth in a lifeboat, and now they were doing the last impossible thing, climbing over an uncharted range of glaciers with no map, no tent, and screws driven through the soles of their boots for grip. They walked for 36 hours without stopping. And somewhere in those 36 hours, Shackleton noticed that he was not counting correctly. There were three of them. He kept sensing four. He said nothing at the time. Would you? You are starving, you have not slept, and you are responsible for the lives of 22 men waiting on a beach behind you. You do not announce that you are seeing things, but months later, when it was over, Shackleton finally wrote it down. He described the strange feeling that their party had one more member than it did. And then something happened that turns this from a curiosity into a genuine scientific problem. Worsley said it too, independently. He described the same sensation, the same extra companion without being told. Crean, when asked, said it as well. Three men, one hallucination. Nobody comparing notes. The story reached the poet T.S. Eliot, who folded it into a passage about a hooded figure walking alongside travelers who could never quite be counted. He got the number wrong in the retelling. He wrote about a third man instead of a fourth. The mistake stuck, and a century later, that is still the name for one of the strangest documented phenomena in human psychology. The third man. Once you know to look for it, you find it everywhere. In 1933, the climber Frank Smythe was pushing alone toward the summit of Everest, higher than anyone had gone at that time. He became so convinced that a partner was climbing beside him, sharing the rope, sharing the effort, that he broke a piece of mint cake in half and turned to hand it over. There was no one to hand it to. Charles Lindbergh, alone over the Atlantic in 1927, more than 20 hours without sleep, described the fuselage behind him filling with presences. They spoke to him. They gave him advice about navigation. He wrote that they were friendly and that their company was reassuring rather than terrifying. Joshua Slocum, the first man to sail around the world alone, was hit by a storm off the Azores in 1895 while sick with food poisoning. He collapsed below deck. When he came to, he found a figure at the helm, steering his boat through the weather, who identified himself as a pilot from Columbus's fleet. Slocum was a hard, unromantic man who did not believe in ghosts. He simply reported what he saw and noted that the boat had held its course perfectly while he was unconscious. Reinhold Messner, descending Nanga Parbat in 1970 after losing his brother in an avalanche, counted a third climber with them on the mountain. And on the morning of September 11th, 2001, a man named Ron DeFrancesco was lying on the floor of a stairwell in the South Tower, in smoke, having given up. He has said that a voice called his name, that something took him by the arm, that he was told to get up. He got up, he went through the fire instead of away from it, and he became the last person to leave that building alive. So what is going on here? For a long time, the answer was simply that people in extremis go a bit mad, and that this is one of the shapes the madness takes. Case closed. But that explanation has a problem, and the problem is the personality of the thing. The Canadian writer John Geiger spent years gathering these accounts, hundreds of them, from mountaineers, sailors, polar explorers, prisoners of war, shipwreck survivors, and 9/11 escapees. He published them in 2009. And what he found in the pile was not chaos. It was consistency. The presence almost always arrives at the point of collapse, not before it. It is almost always calm. It very often gives practical, specific, correct instructions. Get up. Keep walking. Not that way. This way, and when the danger passes, it leaves, usually without any ceremony at all. Peter Sudfeld, a psychologist at the University of British Columbia who has spent his career studying how the mind behaves in extreme and unusual environments, went through survivor accounts systematically and found the same pattern. The sensed presence is overwhelmingly reported as benign, helpful, encouraging. Think about how odd that is. Your brain is starved of oxygen, sleep, food, and warmth. Every system in it is failing. And the thing it produces under that failure is not a monster. It is a friend. Why would a breaking mind be kind to you? To answer that, you have to go somewhere much less romantic than a mountain. You have to go into a hospital room in Switzerland. In 2006, the neuroscientist Olaf Blanke and his colleague Shahar Arzy were mapping the brain of a young woman with epilepsy before surgery. This is routine work. You apply a small electrical current to a region of the brain and note what the patient reports so the surgeons know what not to cut. They stimulated an area called the left temporoparietal junction. That is the patch of tissue where the brain stitches together where your body is, what it is touching, and where it ends, and the world begins. The woman immediately said that someone was behind her. She said the person was close, unpleasant, silent. When she sat up and leaned forward and wrapped her arms around her knees, she reported that the shadow behind her was doing the same thing, holding her, copying her exact posture. She did not recognize it as herself. She never did. The current went off. The person disappeared. The current went on. The person came back. Nobody had walked into the room. Nothing supernatural had occurred. A single region of her brain had been nudged, and it had produced a second human being. Blanke's team went further. In 2014, they built a robot. Blindfolded volunteers, healthy people with no neurological condition, moved a lever with one hand. Behind them, a robotic arm reproduced that exact movement against their back. When the touch on the back arrived at the same instant as the movement of the hand, nothing unusual happened. The brain filed it correctly. That is me. I am doing that. Then the researchers introduced a delay. Half a second. That was all. And the illusion broke in a very particular way. Participants began reporting that there was somebody else in the room, standing behind them, touching them. Several found it so convincing and so unsettling that they asked for the experiment to stop. Half a second of mismatch was enough to manufacture a stranger. Here's what that tells you, and it is the part that should change how you think about yourself. Your sense of being one person located behind your eyes, with a body that clearly belongs to you, is not a fact you are perceiving. It is a conclusion your brain is constantly reaching, thousands of times a second, by cross-checking movement against sensation, against vision, against balance. It is a calculation, and calculations can come out wrong. When the inputs stop lining up because you are exhausted, freezing, oxygen-starved, terrified, or half-conscious in a stairwell full of smoke, the brain still has to file that stream of information somewhere. And when it can no longer confidently label it as me, it does the only other thing it knows how to do. It labels it as someone. The third man is not a ghost, and it is not a guardian angel, and it is not a stranger. It is a copy of you that you have failed to recognize. Which brings back the question that will not go away. If it is you, why is it always so calm? The most persuasive answer is that this thing is not really about your body at all. It is about the part of your brain built for other people. You are a member of a species that never survived alone. For hundreds of thousands of years, being separated from the group was not loneliness. It was a death sentence. Every serious problem your ancestors faced, predators, cold, injury, childbirth, hunger, was solved by other human beings. So your brain runs a permanent, expensive system dedicated to modeling other minds, predicting them, hearing their voices in your head, imagining what they would say. Now strip that system of input, put it on an ice sheet, or in a cockpit over the ocean, or in solitary confinement, or in a hospice bed at 4 a.m. It does not switch off. It keeps searching for a person to model. And in the absence of a real one, it builds one out of whatever is nearest, which is you. That is why the present sounds like a competent friend. It is not being generous to you. It is running on the same voice you have always used inside your own head when you had to talk yourself through something hard, only now it is coming from outside because the part of your brain that stamps a signal me has stopped stamping it. Doctors and nurses in end-of-life care have described a version of this for as long as the profession has existed. The British neuropsychiatrist Peter Fenwick has spent years documenting what dying patients report in their final days, and the accounts are strikingly familiar. A presence in the room, someone waiting, often someone kind. Whatever you believe is happening in those rooms, one thing is clear. It is not random noise. It is a very old system doing the last thing it was built to do, which is to make sure that no human being has to face the worst moment alone. And you do not have to be dying to see it working. You talk to yourself in the kitchen, you argue with someone who is not in the room and win. You feel watched in an empty house. You give your car a name and apologize to it. A child invents a friend and sets a place at the table. None of that is malfunction. That is the machinery idling. The same equipment that put a fourth man on a glacier in 1916 is quietly running in your living room, generating people out of nothing, because a brain like yours has never been designed to be the only mind present. So the next time you feel that prickle on the back of your neck, understand what you are dealing with. You are not being haunted. You are being accompanied. At some point tonight, you will feel like someone is standing behind you. You will turn around, and nothing will be there. But now you know what that nothing is. It is the oldest piece of survival equipment you own, checking whether you still need it. And if you are ever truly finished, colder and more frightened and more alone than you have ever been in your life, it will step out from behind you. And it will walk you home,